Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Arizona Secretary of State Adrian. I'm here today to talk about something fundamental to our democracy, and that is making sure that every eligible Arizonan can vote easily, securely, and with confidence that their vote will be counted. This is why my office has worked to help craft a bill along with our partners in leadership in the legislature, sponsored in the Senate by Leader Sundaration and in the House by Leader De Los Santos, to protect the process that Arizonans rely on to have their voices heard. For years now, election administrators and experts have raised alarms about the swirling rumors and lies surrounding our elections, and that they would turn into devastating policy decisions, and they were right. We have seen it right here at home. Those false narratives led to near constant framing that we hear, that Arizona should run our elections like Florida, for example, and that they would be secure, or whatever other promise du jour would be foisted out there. We need to consider, if that's the case, that for every vote cast in the state of Florida, $20 is allocated. And for every vote cast here in the Grand Canyon state, only $9 gets invested per vote. If you're going to tear down trust in our systems and simultaneously fail to invest to protect our voters' privacy and access to the ballot box, you shouldn't be taken seriously when claiming to care about Arizona's voters. The Voter First Act is a research-based, common-sense proposal to modernize, standardize, and prioritize the voting process across all 15 counties in Arizona, and it's built on some simple truths. This one particularly: access and security are not mutually exclusive. In fact, strong elections require both. First, this proposal focuses on reducing lines and ensuring that all legal votes are counted. We do that by using vote centers statewide, restoring the permanent early vote list, and extending early voting through 5 p.m. on the Monday before Election Day. These steps give voters more flexibility while easing pressure on polling locations, staffing, and resources. The act fixes preventable problems that cost voters their voice. Early ballots accidentally returned to the wrong county should be counted, particularly in communities, for example, like Wickenburg. Part of it is in Yavapai and part of it's in Maricopa County, or Sedona, part in Coconino County and part in Yavapai. Ballots should be collected, processed continuously on Election Day, not just left sitting when voters have already done everything right. These changes don't weaken elections. They respect voters and they improve efficiency. Second, the Voters First Act strengthens election security and infrastructure. It modernizes the 75-foot voter protection zone to reflect today's voting locations and drop boxes. It mandates participation in ERIC, the Electronic Registration and Information Center, with proper funding so that voter rolls remain accurate and secure. Most importantly, it invests directly in election technology and cybersecurity by creating a dedicated funding line, no less than $1 million, to the Secretary of State's budget in an era of increasing cyber threats, threats that we have experienced. Underfunding election security is not an option. Third, the act improves voter communication and transparency. Counties would be required and funded to provide early ballot tracking and curing notifications through text or email. Our voters deserve to know when their ballot is received and if action is needed to ensure that those ballots get counted. Finally, the Voter First Act provides adequate election funding by allowing the Secretary of State and counties to accept private grants for election voter education and innovation, just as many other government agencies already do. This proposal sends a clear message. The days of accepting the bare minimum for our elections are over. We can have secure systems, transparent processes, and accessible voting, but only if the legislature is willing to pay for them. The Voters First Act puts voters first, and now it's time for our legislative leaders to do the same. Thank you. And I would now like to hand the lectern over to our friend from Tucson, Legislative District 18, Senate Leader Priya Sundaration. Leader?
Thank you so much, Secretary Fontes. Good morning. I'm Priya Sundaration. I'm the Senate Democratic leader. And today, I am proud to be introducing the Voters First Act, also under the bill number SB 1262, in partnership with Secretary Fontes. I also want to recognize the many members of the legislature of our Democratic caucus who are here, many who serve on the Elections Committee, who have continuously fought for voter protections and against a lot of the voter suppression ideas that come through the legislature. We have seen time and again the benefits of what happens when we put voters first, and when we come together to find bipartisan, common sense solutions that benefit voters of every political party. I want to underline that. The Voters First Act is not geared to protect any specific voters of any party. It is to support members of every party. As Secretary Fontes highlighted, this will enable and access for voters who are across the state. Now, just 2 years ago, our election administrators came to us with an urgent problem. Recent changes in federal and Arizona law had created a timeline problem where we were at risk. Arizona was at risk of not being able to deliver its presidential electoral votes to Congress in time to be counted. Well, what did we do? The legislators came together and we were able to find a bipartisan fix. We worked quickly and across the aisle alongside our election administrators and stakeholders to find a solution that protected every Arizonan's electoral voice while also expanding voter access. We expanded early voting and we increased voter outreach to cure ballots. Importantly, we kept out the extremist voter suppressive ideas and election denial ideas that continually pop up before us. Well, we're here today to do the same thing. The Voters First Act builds on what's already working in Arizona. It standardizes and codifies best practices that many counties are already using successfully. It restores policies that are popular with voters of all political parties, like restoring the permanent early voter list. It makes significant investments in election security and cybersecurity, recognizing that modern elections require modern protections. And it increases access to the polls by extending early voting to the weekend and the Monday before the election. There's so much more that the Voters First Act contains. And these are not radical ideas. These are common sense proposals. They're popular proposals that modernize and standardize our elections while keeping the focus where it belongs and prioritizing the voters. At a time when trust in our institutions matters more than ever, we're choosing cooperation over conflict, and we're sending a clear message to Arizonans. We can govern responsibly. We can protect the integrity of our elections, and we can expand voter access at the same time. I encourage our counterparts in the Republican majority to work with us to pass the Voters First Act, and I urge your support as well. I'm now going to hand it over to Alex Gulata.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Gulata, and I am the Arizona State Director for All Voting is Local Action. I'll cut to the chase. Over the past several legislative sessions, election deniers in our legislature have intensified efforts to limit common sense voter protections and options, things like vote by mail, things like the use of vote centers. This year, in contrast, voters are being given an affirmative vision for improved voter access while protecting our free and fair elections. This Voter First Act is a reason for hope. The Voter First Act will expand the availability of vote centers, early voting hours, and ballot drop-off options. It'll restore the permanent early voting list. That deserves a round of applause. It'll also speed up results by allowing for the collection of voted ballots throughout the day on Election Day, and it will help ensure that every Arizonan who votes by mail knows that their ballot was received and that it was counted. Think about it a second. Isn't it wild that we have legislatures in this hall, in the halls here, demanding faster results, and at the same time, we make it illegal for our election officials to collect and process the hundreds of thousands of ballots that are dropped off on Election Day. Okay? That is wild, and in fact, we need to fix it, and this bill fixes it. That's the common sense kind of leadership we need. A thriving democracy depends on free and accessible elections. These measures will help ensure that Arizona voters can exercise their constitutional right to vote in ways that suit their busy lives rather than facing narrowing deadlines, further restrictions, and additional unnecessary hurdles. We are thankful to Secretary Fontes, Senator Sundaresan, and Leader De Los Santos, and others for introducing this bill, and we look forward to working together to ensure that Arizona's elections are free, fair, and for the voters, accessible. And now I'll turn it over to Leader De Los Santos.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Oscar De Los Santos, House Democratic Leader. Today, in partnership with Secretary Fontes, House and Senate Democrats, I am proud to introduce the Voters First Act. Arizona is not a state that can afford to be led by extremes. We are a state with many viewpoints, and our democracy works best when all of them are respected. Despite our diversity, there are a few basic things that most Arizonans can agree on. First, people who are legally qualified to vote should be able to cast a ballot without unnecessary obstacles. Second, people who are not legally qualified to vote should be prevented from doing so. And third, voters should be protected from intimidation or threats at polling places and ballot drop boxes. The Voters First Act delivers on those shared, popular expectations. The bill reduces long lines and confusion by expanding vote centers and extending early voting. It makes sure voters who make an honest mistake, like returning a ballot to the wrong county, aren't silenced if their ballot is received on time. It invests in real funding for cybersecurity, and it strengthens election security by keeping voter rolls accurate through the Electronic Registration Information Center, which is the most effective tool we have to maintain accurate voter rolls. The Voters First Act modernizes voter protection zones so intimidation is prohibited wherever people vote, and it improves transparency by requiring ballot tracking and timely notifications when a ballot needs curing, so voters aren't left guessing if their vote counted or not. If there's one thing to know about this bill, it is that it is about running elections that are secure, fair, and accessible, all at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
In closing, I'd like to thank not just our sponsors who are here with us and Alex. I'd like to thank, again, all of the members of the legislature who have joined us back here. Let's give a big round of applause for those folks. Thank you for your support. At the heart of this effort is a simple belief that our democracy is strongest when every voter knows that their voice is being heard and that it matters. The ideas outlined here are not complicated. This is what the voters want. When we reduce barriers, we remind people that participation is welcome. When we fix preventable problems, we honor the effort voters make to show up and participate in leading their own communities. When we invest in security and modern tools, we affirm that their trust is worth protecting. And when we communicate clearly and transparently, we give every voter the confidence that systems are working for them every day, regardless of their party or politics. This is how we build an election system that lifts people up instead of wearing them down, one that serves every community with fairness, dignity, and respect. The choice before us is not whether to change, but whether to rise to the moment, to ensure the resilience of our democracy during uncertain times. If we want elections that are secure, accessible, and worthy of the public's faith, then we must be willing to invest in them and commit to doing better. This proposal builds for that purpose. It puts voters first and asks all of us to do the same. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here, and now we'll take a few questions. Callie, why don't you see if anybody's got any questions for us? Yes.
In terms of the privately funded grants, isn't the reason Secretary of State's not allowed to accept those to avoid the impression of election influence? And what would you say to that?
Well, what I would say to that is this. The reason that privately funded grants are necessary is to educate voters about the time, place, and manner of their elections. These funds reach into communities that sometimes are not reached by normal modes of communication. The other thing that I think is really important about this is that this is one of the methods that almost every other branch of government uses in order to get their jobs done because we are so generally underfunded. Now, if the legislature wants to continue to underfund our communication and education efforts, then this is really a necessity. However, that part may not be necessary, but it has to be offset with appropriate funds so that we can make sure that all voters understand the time, place, and manner of their elections. In that case, then, perhaps this is something we can work on and maybe work away from. But at this time, it's necessary. Yes?
When you say modernize, voter protections and that 75-foot limit, what does that look like, and how has it, I guess, changed from the provision in the EPM that kind of sought to do the same, that was challenged in the reports?
Well, what it does is it codifies that particular point. Thank you for bringing that up. That we want to have that voter protection zone apply to the ballot drop boxes. This has been challenged for I'm not sure what reasons, but we want to make sure that voters who are peaceably assembling in their First Amendment capacity to cast their ballot can do so without protesters nearby or people taking their pictures or intimidation of other forms. That's one of the ways that we want to modernize the electoral code here in Arizona. One of the other ways we want to modernize it is by extending our early voting period through Monday, 5 p.m. Right now, we have this thing called emergency voting that is based on paper rolls at polling places. We don't do that anymore. We have technology that has fixed that. So we want to get away from these archaic notions that limit voter access and modernize it to where the technology has now helped to serve the voters. We want the system to allow the technology to better serve our voters that way. So those are two ways that we'd like to do that.
Any other questions?
Yes.
In terms of the cybersecurity funding, since your office has been asking for that for months now, has there been any positive response to that idea from Republican lawmakers?
Well, we have a variety of different avenues that we're pursuing from our office for some of the cybersecurity funding. This would be part of a more permanent fix that would allow our office to continue to modernize year in and year out. We have some other efforts that are underway right now, and I do know that we have been working closely with the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, which will be meeting soon. We hope to get some headway there. We have had a little bit of help on the cybersecurity side from the chief executive, and so we're moving in that direction. I think folks understand how critically important our cybersecurity is and how incredibly urgent it is to work on that now. What this bill proposes is a more permanent set of funding so that we can continue to stay secure and stay ahead of the bad guys instead of having to act on an emergency basis year in and year out. Yes?
What's the plan to get this moving in the legislature, given, I guess, the current position on some of these policies by the majority?
Well, here's the Schoolhouse Rock moment for everybody. As a member of the executive branch, I don't play in the legislature as much as these folks do, so I would defer to the leaders on where the maneuverings are going to be. We're going to be as helpful as possible with all of the resources that our office can lend to work this through the legislature, but they're the ones with the magic sauce. I don't know if either one of you would like to answer that question a little bit better. Senator?
Sure, thanks, Secretary. Well, as I noted in my speech, we really welcome Republicans who would want to join us in supporting the Voters First Act. And as I mentioned, These are proposals, they're common sense proposals, popular with the voters, and also ones that will benefit voters of every party. So this is not partisan. These are very just common sense, broadly applicable proposals that will support all voters in Arizona. I welcome Republican support. We will talk to, we'll talk to the Republicans in the legislature. I will also note that as Democratic leader, I don't get many of my bills heard, so we'll try and we'll see, but it may be a tough slog.
I think we have time for one more.
Hearing none, once again, I want to thank very much Senator and Leader Sundaration, Representative and Leader De Los Santos, all of the rest of the members of the legislature and members of our community, Alex Galata, of course, and all of the folks that he has marshaled here today. We very much appreciate this on behalf of Arizona's voters. Again, this is common sense. It will benefit all voters from all parties, and we really hope that we can work closely with the rest of the folks in the legislature and ultimately get something positive to the governor's desk so that we can improve our experience for all voters here in Arizona. Thank you for being here this morning, everyone. Appreciate you.